Hey, good morning. Granny Gear here for Old Guy and a Bike. You know, in a recent video, I announced that I was going to be trying an oval chainring on my Turner Cyclosis gravel bike. Well, on this Tech Tuesday video, my first impressions of riding something that is decidedly not round. At the end of this video, I'll put a link up to why I wanted to try an oval chainring at all on my gravel bike. You can look at that. But real briefly, I mounted up a Garber oval chainring, 1x of course, with the same tooth count, 38, as the round one I SRAM that I took off on my Turner Cyclosis gravel bike. I've been riding it. Not as much as I wanted to, just been kind of busy. But here are my initial impressions, because initial impressions can count for a lot. Now, I've got a lot of riding to do still in this before I make up my mind, but I have to say, it's been kind of perplexing. There are some things that you hear about oval chain rings, and I was curious to experience them. For instance, do they feel strange to pedal? Well, yes, and no. For example, I mount this thing up, get on the gravel bike, meet some buddies for a ride. We're gonna go do a couple-hour ride up in the mountains, and I go riding on my driveway out in the street. I'm in a pretty low gear, I'm just kind of coasting out in the street, and I'm noticing it definitely feels different. I don't know if different is good or bad, but it was different. Now, go across town. It's about maybe a mile through town. It's about a 3-mile paved climb, like 800-foot climb. All right. Just riding up it, got my music on. My buddies are riding up it, they're talking. And I realized something as I got near the top of the climb. I wasn't even thinking about it anymore. I wasn't even noticing that it felt different anymore. I was just pedaling my bike. And I thought, well, that's remarkable. So although it was odd, my body had already pretty much adjusted to it, or wasn't thinking about it anymore, in which, our human body's got an amazing ability to adjust to where something at first feels weird, after a while it feels normal. So anyway, there is that, but within a very short period of time, I really didn't notice the way it was pedaling oddly. Now, the second thing you hear people talk about is that if you put say I had a 38 tooth round ring and then you go to a oval ring, well, you could run a bigger oval ring because it climbs and puts power down like a bigger ring. So I could go in with a 40 oval to replace my 38. And I have to admit, that interested me. Have I found that to be true? I can't measure it. I don't have power meters and those types of things. My overall thoughts is, no, that doesn't really seem like that's happening. I don't feel like I just magically gained a lower chain ring, at least not through the entire pedal stroke. But here's something kind of interesting that I did notice. At one point in the ride, maybe we're an hour into that ride I'm talking about, my first ride. And we're on this little road, and it's an old paved forest road, and it gets really steep for a second. And I didn't really want to shift down and spin, so I kind of shift up a gear, and I stood out of the pedals, and I'm just kind of rocking the bike back and forth, grinding along, right? Now, since the chain ring mimics a smaller chain ring when you're on the downstroke, but not the rest of the time, right? When I'm standing, it's all about the downstroke, because you can't spin when you're pedaling, right? You can't spin when you're standing pedaling. And you know what I noticed? It honestly, in that moment, it did feel like I was in a lower gear than I expected to be in. Does that make sense? It felt like I was actually would have been working harder standing in that gear in the round ring than I was in the oval. That was my impression. So I don't know. There is that. Now, I was wondering if I could spin this thing at a high RPM. Now, it's a gravel bike. I don't have to do that a lot like maybe I would on a road bike, but I also only have a 38 tooth chainring, right? So if I'm trying to go faster, it can get a little spinny at times. Is it harder to spin? Yes, and sort of. If you're a masher, if you pedal squares, or if you're just a power rider and you just push down, okay, and that works for you, it doesn't mean that you're a bad rider, it's just kind of your style, right? Already you know that it's hard for you to spin a high cadence because if you're not concentrating on pedaling a smoother circle, you're going to start to get to where you're bouncing a little bit. But if you're a strong, powerful rider, unless you're out of gear, you're just going to shift up, right? Okay. If you just push down and the cadence gets higher and higher, I noticed on the oval ring, I will tend to start to bounce in the saddle much sooner than I would with a round ring. I have a pretty smooth cadence at high RPMs, especially with the redshift seat post, because that accentuates that. But if I concentrate on my pedal stroke, which I've been working on, and I try and do a little bit of follow through on the downstroke, just a little pull through at the bottom. I'm not pulling up on the backstroke. I'm not doing that. Just that little flip at the bottom. If I do that, right, all of a sudden I can spin this oval crank, no problem at all. Now, another thing you hear talked about is that when you're in slow, grinding, technical situations, it tends to smooth out the pedal stroke and it's easier on your knees. Well, I don't have knee issues. I'm not sure if I will notice that. I will say though, and I've got a ride coming up that I want to try this on. It's a ride that it's the one that really inspired the whole movement to a 38 tooth, because it's a local ride. I like doing it. It's like, what is it? 3,000 feet of climbing in less than 8 miles, and it's all dirt, kind of rough dirt. That's why I geared down for rides like that. So I want to go do that, because I do have a feeling that in those situations where you're turning the cranks over slowly and you're making the most of what you got in a slow kind of techie situation, I do think it feels actually pretty good. I've done one steep dirt climb now in this, one or two, and my impression was that I felt efficient. Right now, that word, I can't put any numbers to that, but I have to say, it felt good. Was I truly getting more out of it than the round ring? I don't know, but at least in the moment, I was kind of happy I was pedaling an oval ring. Well, all right, that's it. I don't want to make this too long. And so I'm going to put a lot more time into this before I make up my mind. But here's something that is in the back of my mind. I'll leave you with this. If I really can't notice a significant difference in the ring over a round ring, why bother? On the other hand, if it is giving me some advantages somewhere, right, maybe in those moments, whatever that might be, and it doesn't detract from my riding experience in other ways, why not run it? Have a great week and or weekend, and as always, you go ride your bikes.